morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Frank Aibogo. I'm the publisher of Business Day. I am very delighted, and it's with an honor, really, that I welcome our distinguished speakers and panelists, as well as our audience, to this very interesting digital dialogue. It's titled Future of Work, Remote Work, Lessons from the Lockdown. In the course of the next 1 hour or so, we will be taking through the findings of an interesting research conducted on employees working from home in the course of the lockdown. And I believe, without any question, whether you are leading human capital in your organization or whether you are CEO of your organization, the findings that you'll be about to hear will be very helpful in helping you make informed decisions based on empirical evidence. This research surely will be, if you allow me, the best and the first in Nigeria. Business is very glad to have this partnership with Dane Institute, led by our able Professor Franca Ovaje, who led this survey or this study and who will be presenting the outcome of the survey shortly. COVID-19 has impacted and continues to impact our work and our life in more ways than we could ever have imagined. And by the results of this survey and the discussions that will be following, Dane Institute is hoping, along with Business Day, that our audience this morning will be able to be better equipped and ready for what I think still are the many turbulent days and turbulent weeks ahead. Some say this is a new normal. Others argue it may not be a new normal if we were to find a cure or indeed a vaccine. There are some interesting noises being made in the last 48 hours about some promising vaccine candidates. Only time will tell how far we go. That's all I'm supposed to do this morning. My work is done. But before I pull out, let me introduce the moderator for this session, Esther Akinukawe, who is Chief Human Resources Officer for MTN, and she will be leading us in the conversation that will shortly ensue. Once again, let me thank Professor Vaje and Dane Institute for collaborating with Business Day, and let me yield the floor to Esther. Over to you, madam.
Thank you so much, Mr. Egbogun. Good morning once again. Good morning to our dear panelists and our wonderful audience. It's such a privilege to be here. I'm glad that we have had, that wonderful opening remarks by Mr. Egbogun, and we'll go swiftly into the webinar, for today. He's told us the topic, which is future of work, remote work, lessons from the lockdown. And we have just about 60 minutes for this webinar, including the Q&A session. I'll be looking forward to receiving questions from you, our wonderful audience. To send in your questions, you can use hashtag, you send it on Slido, and you use hashtag BDFOW. That is the code to use. On Slido, hashtag BDFOW. So once again, my name is Esther Akinukawe. I'll go swiftly to introduce the panel members. Okay. I am the Chief Human Resources Officer of MTN, as been announced. I have about 26 or so years cognate experience spanning management, consulting, services, education, banking, and telecommunications. And I serve on the board of Edfi Microfinance Bank as an independent non-executive director. I'll go to our distinguished speakers, and I'll start with Dr. Franca Ovaje. I'm so sorry, Professor Franca Ovaje. Professor Franca Ovaje has a PhD in business administration from the IESE Business School, Barcelona, Spain, and was a pioneer faculty member of the Lagos Business School, LBS, where she led sessions on leadership, change management, and human resource management, in addition to teaching assignments in Barcelona at the IESE Business School, South Africa, Ghana, and Kenya, amongst others. An African Management Scholar Award winner, a published author, and an active consultant to industry. Professor Ovaje is a founder and executive director of Dane Institute for Research, a company that is committed to conducting and promoting research with far-reaching impact on the African environment. It's a pleasure, Professor Ovaje. Don't mind me. I used to know her when she was a doctor, and that has stuck. I'm so sorry. It's wonderful to have you here with us, Professor Ovaje. Next, I'll go on to Mrs. Tolulope Agiri. Mrs. Tolulope Agiri is the Chief Human Resources Officer of InterSwitch Group. Her career spans national and international roles, both as an HR consultant and practitioner in organizations such as Arthur Andersen, now known as KPMG Professional Services, Unilever Africa, Middle East and Turkey, and Nigeria, where she rose to become the Human Resources Director, as well as the United Nations World Food Programme based in Johannesburg, South Africa. It's great to have you here with us, Tolu. Thank you. And last but not least is Mr. Gbemiga Owolabi. He is the Organization and Human Resources Director for Lafarge Africa, PLC, one of the many HR director roles he has held in multinational organizations in various geographies, including Nigeria, United Kingdom, and East Africa, spanning the FMCG, oil and gas, and telecommunications industrial sectors. Prior to Lafarge, Gbemiga was the HR director of Airtel Networks Nigeria. Really delighted to welcome you, Gbemiga. You're welcome, everyone. But before I proceed to the next item on our agenda, I'd like to remind our audience that you can send your questions on Slido, and the code to use is #BDFOW. Would really love to receive your questions, and I'm sure that the panelists will do their very best to make sure that the questions are adequately attended to. The lockdown in Lagos that commenced in the last week of March due to the COVID-19 pandemic took many organizations by surprise. Employees had to work from home for an extended period of time. And for many of them, it was the very first time they were working from home or remotely. What challenges did people face working from home? And what did organizations do to support their employees to ensure productivity while working from home? Are there even advantages to working from home compared to working from the office? And post-COVID-19, would employees happily go back to working from the office, or do they expect a new normal, given their experience? The Dane Institute for Research carried out a survey of employees who worked from home during the lockdown to explore these questions and identify key learnings and implications for Nigerian organizations going forward. And Professor Ovaje will share with us key insights and recommendations from this research shortly. But subsequently, I will invite Mrs. Agiri and Mr. Owolabi to help us situate these insights within the context of their organizations and share with us practical action plans that they have implemented or are even currently implementing along these dimensions that will be presented to us by Professor Ovaje, and that would be has been reviewed in the research. So without much ado, I'll invite Professor Ovaje to share the outcomes of the research on remote work, but just to quickly share her screen. Okay. To assist Professor Ovaje. Okay. Can you see this? I'm sharing the presentation.
Yeah.
Can you see it?
Yes,
you
we
see
can.
it? Excellent. So without much ado, I'll invite Professor Ovaje to share the outcomes of the research on remote work during the lockdown with us over the next 20 minutes. Thank you, Professor Ovaje. Over to you.
Thank you very much and good morning. I'll be relying on you also to help move the slides. They
Yes,
move from one slide to the other. In late 2019, late last year, the HR manager proposed to her MD a policy on work from home. And she thought that if employees work from home a few days a week, two times a week to be exact, things would be much better. The MD's answer was no. He could not believe that employees can actually work from home. What happened? March 2020, the lockdown of Lagos. These same employees now had to work from home with many others. We decided to carry out this research to find out, to provide some evidence-based research to shape management practice in moving forward. Can I have the next slide, please? So the purpose then was that to carry out evidence-based research. Our methodology was an online survey. We used SurveyMonkey. There were 19 questions we asked. Some questions were closed questions in the sense that we suggested options to participants, and they ticked one of those options or some of them. And there were also open questions where we asked participants to talk about those challenges or advantages themselves. And with the open questions, we're able to get a nuanced understanding of the challenges or advantages of working from home. The online survey we sent via WhatsApp, email, and so on. Can I have the next slide, please? All right. Now, talking about the respondents, we had 497 respondents, people who lived in Lagos. We're looking for people who live in Lagos and who worked from home. So the first question was, do you work from home? We found that 36 people did not, and therefore we didn't use that for analysis. We analyzed 461 respondents' results. And the characteristics of that sample are also quite interesting. We had 85% of them are in management grade, which means there were only 15% from the lower cadre of the organization. We also found that 60% of them were married, 52% had children of school age. This is important because during the lockdown, children were schooling, parents were working in the same house with the space available. And we found that 45% of the sample came from telecoms, from education, and of course the financial sector. So that gives us a little bit the context within which we carried out this survey. Can I have the next question, please? So we asked, let's now look at the results of this study. We asked them the challenges, the 5 biggest challenges you are currently facing while working from home. The first one, I don't think should surprise us, was internet connectivity, access to the internet. I mean, even having this webinar, you're always hopeful that your connection works. Now, if someone is working 8 hours a day from home, how stable is that access? Especially when everybody is working from home at the same time, and you wonder whether the companies, have enough capacity to provide that internet connectivity. The next challenge they mentioned was keeping a regular schedule. It took them time to get to a regular schedule, to say, I am going to start work at such and such a time, and so on. Because before, they were used to waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning and running off to work, to big traffic and to work. Now they didn't have to do that, but they still needed a regular schedule. Another challenge they mentioned was too many distractions at home. Obviously, the whole family was at home. So even for those that were not married, they were living with parents, there were so many distractions at home. Then there was also the anxiety about the impacts of coronavirus. And I'm not sure that organizations and senior managers realize that during this time of working from home, that anxiety is still there. And people are still concerned about that. Finally, they talked about the workspace, physical workspace. A spouse, both spouses need physical workspace, and then children need workspace for their schooling, homeschooling. These were challenges, and everyone had to find a place. And finding a place was important in order to enter a routine of working from home. So the respondents also told us in their own words, apart from these 5 variables you have seen here, that there are 2 other factors that were important to them. One was epileptic power supply. So they had to charge their devices, whenever there was light. Some others spent more money because they had to run generators. They couldn't give excuses for not meeting their targets. And finally, they also talked about the lack of respect for their time. Some felt that because they were working from home, they were working 24/7, because managers would call them even during the weekend. They would call for meetings, unscheduled meetings. These meetings will last a very long time. So really, we looked at the challenges that they face, knowing that this is the first time they are working from home. Most of them are working from home. The challenges seemed enormous. And then we've now come to the advantages of working from home. Next slide. Okay. So when we came to the advantages of working from home, the story is different. 70% of respondents said that the key advantage of working from home was saving in commute time. And here, some respondents even talked about the terror of traffic, that, the cost of traffic to them. Now, some talked about 4 to 6 hours of traffic daily, which they had saved. And now they could sleep more. They felt more rested. They didn't have to rush out of the house. And they were more creative. And it was quite interesting. See, the time, the stress, the cost of traffic jams, all this, they said this is a huge advantage of working from home. Another advantage is flexible schedule. Working from home, they expected, and some of them managed to get that flexibility, that maybe my preferred time is not exactly 9 o'clock to 5. It may be slightly different, but so long as I achieve my deliverables, there shouldn't be any problem with this. So 30% looked at the flexible schedule. The work-family balance also was interesting. And one respondent said, for example, that it's the first time they have been home without visitors for so many weeks, and this enabled the family to bond. That's another key advantage of strengthening these family bonds, as a key advantage of working from home. And finally, respondents talked about increased productivity. They were working from home and they were producing more. Unlike the CEO that refused last year to implement a working from home policy, here we had people who said, look, I'm more rested now. I can find new ways, better ways of doing things. Things have been doing in a particular way because that was the way to do it. And perhaps I was too tired to think about new ways of doing it. So they have a clear state of mind, it said, and they realized they could do more. They could, wake up. They didn't have to wake up at 4 a.m., beat traffic and all that. And now they could focus on getting the work done. This we found very interesting. However, two respondents, not one, that working from home had no advantage for him except staying safe. So it's important to also note this minority opinions. Okay, what helped employees work from home productively? I think this is also very interesting. Here we have personal factors and organizational factors. I found very interesting that they said that a positive mindset was essential to working from home very effectively. Respondents felt they would need to justify their salary, their job. These were uncertain times. They were worried about not just the COVID, but also their livelihood. Will they have a job moving forward? Something else that helped them was time management, and some organizations actually helped because they organized some time management programs to help their employees do the to-do list, set up a to-do list, schedule a routine that will help them be productive. Self-mastery was also important. Having a routine was not enough. That they needed willpower and dedication, self-discipline. Someone said, I made the decision to work productively from home. So working from home has a lot to do with personal factors. Physical space obviously was important, setting up a space, and that space is like sacred, that's my little space. And what else helped? Experience with working from home. A few people had that experience. A few companies already had a working from home policy as part of the business continuity program. And so they just plugged into it immediately. Support from the family was also very important for working from home productively. The other factors are organizational factors, infrastructure and resources, and organizational support. Now, the infrastructure and resources have to do with having the power supply, having the laptop, having access to the internet, and so on. But organizational management support, what helped them was having clear objectives. Now, this is an area that we'll talk about a little later too, that managers themselves were not very clear about these objectives. But where objectives were clear, it helped them work productively because they could focus. These are the deliverables, these are the feedback times, and we can achieve those. Communication was important, but not only communication about work, but just managers checking in. How are you doing? How can I help? And so on. They found that this also was very good support from managers. Support from colleagues too. Some colleagues did not answer their emails or calls, but also because there was no work from home policy that states that emails should be answered within 24 hours and other instant messages, for example, within 2 hours. When those policies didn't exist, it was a bit difficult for them to work productively because of the collaboration, the need for advice or clarification from a colleague who is not responding because there is no policy guiding that. Then the big question we asked them was, what would you like to work from home or remotely in the future? 98% of our respondents said yes, they would like to work from home. Just less, about 2% said they would not. 52% specified, yeah, two times a week. They would like to work from home 2 times a week. In fact, one employee said, the office is just the place where I have everything I need to do my job. So my office can be my home. It was quite interesting because if not for the lockdown, I wonder if we would have heard that from a Nigerian employee, this year. But my office is where I can get things done, and it can be from home. So what can we say then? What concluded thoughts can we have? Our research seems to suggest that the future of work is work from home. There are huge savings, and these savings come in the commute time and the cost of commute. What commute does to the health and the creativity or lack of it of respondents, of employees, I think we're not paying enough attention to that. employees are saying that they were more rested, they were more creative, they were more productive because they were saved that traffic. And then traffic is also a problem that organizations can help solve. Because if we reduce the demand for roads, if we reduce the number of people plying every day because they are not working from home, that will make a big difference to those that have to be on the road. And it's something that we hope that the state government will also look at, because working from home is one of the ways we can reduce traffic in Lagos. It's true that 2% said they would rather work from the office, and we want to think about what opportunities do we give people for opportunities for choice? Do we say work from home, everybody now work from home? Or there will be some people who would rather work from the office? This research is much bigger than what we have presented here, but we presented what I think is critical here. How do we manage remote workers? And I think this is a big thing for managers. I remember one CEO saying, I can't feel the organization anymore. It's tough to feel an organization when everybody is working from home, but you need to get a feel for the organization. Now, how do we get a feel for the organization in this new normal? Setting specific smart objectives for their people has been an issue. If we can't do that moving forward, it's going to make working from home a little bit more difficult. So that's about it for this research. We've tried to show here that future of work in Lagos is working from home. The implications of this research for employees and employers, not only for the private sector, but also for the public sector. In fact, some of our sample works in the public sector too. And we hope that the study results will help to improve practice in Lagos, in Nigeria. Thank you very much.
Wow. That was brilliant. Thanks so much, Professor Vaje, for that insightful presentation. In fact, you have provided a lot of empirical data that organizations can rely on to make informed decisions. You mentioned, the 5 biggest challenges people faced working from home. You talked about the key advantages of working from home, the biggest being the savings in commute time. You talked about the factors that helped employees to work from home effectively. And the most interesting one, 98% of respondents were unequivocal in their response that they would like to work from home. And then you drew wonderful conclusions for organizations, to take note of going forward. Thank you so much, for that wonderful presentation. And so next up is our panel discussion, which would last 25 minutes. And the idea is to really ensure that we drill further down into the findings that Professor Vaje has shared with us. But once again, I'd like to remind our audience that you can send in your questions on Slido using the hashtag BDF0W. BDFOW, that is the code to use. So I'll go back to my panelists. And the first question is actually to both of you, Tolu and Bemiga, but I'll start with you, Tolu. The Dane Institute's research findings provide empirical data on the challenges with work from home during the lockdown, and I've reeled out some of this. As Chief Human Resources Officers of your companies, it would be great to hear your perspectives about these research outcomes. For instance, what were your key findings during the lockdown along the dimensions mentioned by Professor Vaje, and what were your company's responses to this? Tolu, I'll start with you, maybe in the next 3 minutes or so, to tell us and share perspectives with us.
Great. Thank you, Esther, for this. Thank you, Professor, for that very refreshing expose, I would say, and for an unveiling of what you found. So I'll start by saying this. As the lockdown started, a lot of us weren't prepared. And therefore, this thing around some Fisher's personal transition curve played out. People were frustrated, they were scared, they were anxious, and they were generally wondering, what is this life I've been exposed to? I don't know what's going to happen. One of the things that we did at the very start of lockdown was we organized some sessions for our teams. The sessions were not time management sessions. They were psychology stress management sessions, because it was obvious that employees just needed to settle into this thing. People were nervous about COVID. They were nervous about their jobs. They were wondering, would I still have a job? So we used a lady here in Nigeria and we used another lady in South Africa, and we simply mixed up the sessions. And I attended a couple of those sessions myself and they were helpful. So it wasn't really about the work. It was about the person and how do we ensure that you're healthy in this period. Now, we actually also did a survey. So as Professor Vaje was sharing her thoughts, I thought, well, I would share some of those just to confirm that some of your findings are actually spot on the money. And irrespective of how you do it or where you do it, actually, data is data. The one thing that our survey seems to point out is that leadership is so critical in this period. If you're looking for a period to find leaders, throw them in crisis. This was a crisis for our organization, for most organizations. But we discovered about 74%, 84%, I beg your pardon, of our employees on a scale of 1 to 7, a general question of how are you feeling, actually chose from 4 upwards. They said they were good. And their being good could be linked to a couple of things. 82% of them said they were enjoying line manager support. And what this meant was line managers were calling, checking every day. 85% of them said they had access to the right info. The truth is, before the final lockdown, we had done some drills at work just to ensure people had the access, they had the VPN and all that. 77% said they were confident in the decisions that leaders were making in the lockdown. The other thing was they said they enjoy the communication. HR was at the forefront of this. We were communicating about once a week, just sharing thoughts about what's happening and what we're doing about it. However, the survey also unveiled a couple of things. 47% of our people said they were doing beyond their capacity. So they had meetings till late at night. And I say it not with a lot of pride that I was probably one of the culprits. So you're working on a project at 9 p.m. and you're thinking, I can quickly get data from my colleague. I WhatsApp them, they reply me. And when I saw that this was becoming a problem, I actually did a general note to my team to say, if you get a WhatsApp from me at an inappropriate time, you have the right not to respond to me till the next morning. Why? Because I'm nocturnal. And I discovered that this was really worrisome for people. 65% said actually we should keep the information and communication coming even more. Like talk to us every other day. We noticed actually that employees in the lower cadre were more vulnerable during this period. So while the happiness quotient for the guys at the managerial grade was 77%, at the lower grade it was 44% on the question of are you happy or not. So all of a sudden we started to see we needed to dissect the data even more. We asked them the question, what is making your work from home an issue? 51% said it was connectivity. And I'll tell you how we responded to that. 59% have said, and this is really related to COVID, that they are not comfortable coming back to work. So again, we know that. Now, what have we done? Because I actually don't want Esther to stop me before I finish. Now, we've done 3 things in 3 buckets. We concentrated on people. So we communicated, HR was building comms, HR comms 1, comms 2, comms 3. We stepped up our employee assistance program. Luckily, we started this program last year. And actually getting reports from our service provider indicated that we actually had a lot more people checking into employee assistance. Now, in my organization, we're about 70% millennials. And millennials are, a lot of them are impressionable. They've got peer pressure. Some of them are living alone. They're not married. The guys that are married have school, young children going to school. And therefore, having EAP was a big thing for them. Now, we do call tree every single day. We still do it now. And the call tree goes from the least to the MD of the company. So the call trees happen in the functions. So every single day, everybody checks in to say Tolu and family okay today. And when they're not okay, they say Tolu and family okay, but husband in hospital. Tolu and family okay, but cousin is, tested positive for COVID, so that we could keep our fingers on what's happening. And this enabled us to actually check in with people that had new births that we probably wouldn't have known, people that were sick, malaria, typhoid, whatever it was. We had one session where we had a town hall, and the town hall was with the MD. It was beautiful. This was an opportunity for him to speak live to the rest of the organization. And if you know my MD, one of the things that's big about him is his heart. He actually said to employees, I understand some of you are concerned about your jobs. Actually, COVID will not be a reason for us to sack. And that single comment did a lot for people. Just to say, okay, I'm not worrying about my job. Let me concentrate on other things. The other thing we did, which was impactful, was because COVID was ravaging everywhere, we actually got employees to donate money. And we didn't know whether this was going to work. We said to them, guess what? This thing is affecting everybody. We're a company with purpose. How would you love to be involved in solving the problem? How about you donate a certain percentage of your money? Over 60% of the organization agreed to donate 10% of their salary for 3 months back to back. What this meant was they didn't just see this thing as something that was happening out there. They actually started to own it. And luckily for us, the board matched the donation. They actually doubled that donation. We gave out data allowance.
Yes. I just, wanted just waiting for you to wrap up. Thank you so much.
Okay, give me 30 seconds.
Yes, I will.
We gave out data allowance. We linked employees with easy alternate power, just in case they wanted to buy into some. And even for people that decide to go to the office even now, we have mapped floors for social distancing laws, and we continue to just make sure that the employees are fine. For productivity, we have upped our IT tools, and HR has almost continued as if nothing happened. Recruitment is happening, training is happening, performance appraisal is happening, calibration is happening. Thank you, Esther. I apologize if I overshot my time.
No, not at all. I mean, that was really, really wonderful. Thank you so much. I took a lot of notes about what you did in your organization. But one thing, that really resonated with me was the fact of leadership communications that, and HR was at the forefront of that leadership organization communication. And I believe that is also one of the, key findings from the research by Professor Ovaje, that HR has to rise, to the occasion at this time to help the organization respond effectively to, the situation that we're currently in. Thank you. And I also like the fact that you conducted a survey that supports even the findings that Professor Ovaje has shared with us and all the responses that your organization introduced. Thank you so much for that. So I'll come to you, Gbemiga. What were your key findings during the lockdown along the dimensions that Professor Ovaje shared with us? And how did your company respond to this? I'd like you to share your perspectives with us in the next 3 minutes, over the next 3 minutes. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Esther. Thanks, Tolu and Prof. So fortunately for me, I've worked in 2 companies even during this period. So I'll probably share my experience across 2 organizations. Look, we're moving into something new. What probably some other people will call as a better normal, because whether we like it or not, even after COVID-19, we'll probably move into remote working eventually. But it also requires a mindset, because the reason why most organizations, like Prof said, why they refused to actually imbibe remote working from the beginning was because of the mindset. Okay, so but in the next 18 months, we're probably stuck. And then after that, what do we do? So let me take it from about 3 or 4 perspectives. So tools. First of all, we needed to actually make sure that, the infrastructure to support the employees who are actually there. You can't ask people to start sitting at home and not provide the tools for them. How do they get the laptops? How do they get a VPN to work? Everything has to be done. And we spent a lot of time identifying what do you have. We test run most of the time, even before the eventual lockdown. We started in phases, then we went through the whole organization and said, okay, look, let's even see whether the bandwidth of the organization can actually support if everyone is actually remote working. And that's actually a lot, because you can imagine where you also have to start thinking about, okay, look, if your password expires during this period, what happens? Can you connect onto the system and stuff like that? Let me take to rules. There were no rules before, right? So you also needed to now start establishing it. I remember that about 2 weeks ago, we had to send out something on communication to all employees about even as simple as setting up meetings. It is because what people do now is that what you could have easily done in the office for 5 minutes and just have a chat with you, everybody goes onto your system and drops a 30 or 1 hour meeting request. And that clogs up your life, okay? And there's no even a respite between meetings and another meeting. So you start from probably 8:30 and then you go on until about 7 o'clock. So we have to now start doing communication to people and saying, look, you know what, you can't do it this way. This is how you need to do. You need to give people 15 minutes respite. If you check their calendars, everybody make sure that you update your calendars and stuff like that. Another thing is about the fact that you said the rules about even dressing codes. When are people going to be responding to emails? You don't want your people to, even get onto a call and all the screens are actually blank because there's no video. So you don't know whether anybody is actually listening to you or concentrating or doing something else. So communication, tips to people, awareness continues to go on as to how do we make this a better normal? Because whether we like it or not, we're actually stuck in it. And then, of course, the behaviors are also there in terms of, you know what, I remember people used to call me and the first thing they said is that, baby, I'm sorry to have disturbed you. And I was like, I'm working. Why do you think you're disturbing me by calling me? So it's all those things that leadership also has to come in. You understand? Because eventually it is the leaders that are going to set the norms going forward. What do you accept? Can I tolerate when dogs are barking? When I'm on the call with my employees? When the child comes in, do I get angry just because the person is being interrupted by the kid that wants to quickly have a chat with, especially when the kids were even at home then, and they are online classes, and they just pop into your room and say, look, Daddy, can I ask you something? So how do leaders actually tolerate that going forward? The other one that I'm going to talk about is culture, and this is where it is very critical for leaders. Now, naturally, I don't think it's a Nigerian thing, it's all over the world anyway. How do I know that, you know what, my employee that is doing remote working is actually not sitting down in front of Netflix watching Living in Bondage? How do I know that actually you are concentrating? Because I tell you, even from the beginning of the lockdown, I had to do a mindset shift for me to say, look, you know what, if I call you and you don't pick up, it is not because you are not at work. Okay, it took me a long time before I could get that out of my head. And also for employees themselves, how do they know that, look, you know what, I've not talked to my line manager for a day. How would they know that I'm actually at work and I'm delivering? So we have to get to a stage where we started telling people that, you know what, output matters. And for you to be able to get people to deliver, you need to let trust take over control. You can't control everybody at the same time. Now, probably the last ones, because I know Esther is going to jump on me now, is on resilience. Now, you will probably think that remote working is exciting for people, but it's actually very stressful. Like Tolu said, you know what, people work for 20 hours, you can call at any time. How do we get leaders to actually realize that, you know what, they have to be able to manage their employees? You know, we continue to do employee assistance program so that people realize that they need to call, they need to talk to someone, and that they are not alone. And one good thing that also resonated with me is what Tolu said, where, you know what, even the leader has to actually put the mind of everybody at rest so that they don't start fearing that if I'm at home doing remote working, is an opportunity for someone to say, look, okay, we can actually do away with your job. My MD continues to reiterate it that, look, you know what, this is it. You are not losing your job, and it is something that you need to concentrate and just deliver for us to be able to sustain the business going forward. I'm going to stop here. So, Esther, back
Brilliant.
to you.
Thank you so much, Gbemiga. Thank you so much. I mean, you've also talked about what your organization did. You provided tools, you set the right rules. Of course, trust is key. So you really played up on that very well. And then resilience and leadership support. One thing is clear from both your responses. It is that your responses evolved as the events became clearer. And that is what agility is all about. So, Gbemiga, I'll come back to you right now with the second question. And before I do that, I'd like to appreciate our audience. I've started seeing the questions. They've started pouring in. You can still send your questions in on Slido using the hashtag BDFOW. So question number 2, Gbemiga. Elimination of traffic or commute time came out as the major advantage of work from home from the research findings, and the reason why the productivity of employees increased, probably. The question is, are you surprised by this? And if you're not, what suggestions do you have for managing traffic in Lagos, given the impact on employee productivity and consequently organizational performance? I'd like you to keep the response brief so that I can go on to other questions. Thank you, Gbemiga.
Okay, Esther. I mean, look, you know what? The traffic in Lagos is a phenomenon on itself. And I don't know how anybody is going to solve it, because look, most of the companies are on the island anyway. And crossing over to the island is actually a crazy thing. And you can also imagine that, you know, by 24th of July, they're also going to shut down a part of the 12 Mainland Bridge. So it becomes more a serious thing. But again, it's about the remote mindset. Look, I'll tell you this one. If organizations can start with a remote first mindset and also remote first infrastructure, then it becomes easier for you to react to certain things. Remote working will essentially solve issues. It reduces the number of vehicles on the road. It reduces especially for the public service, because we have a lot. I can't imagine how many employees Lagos State has as its workers. So if they start practicing that, I'm very sure that you're going to find a very notable change in terms of traffic in Lagos. But how do we get employees to? How do we move around these, especially if you can't basically build the 4th and the 5th and the 6th 12 Mainland Bridge and make sure that our roads are good? There's so many ways. And as long as we think maturely and we say, look, you know what, I can do remote working. So I sort out that one. As much as possible, I have people that will do remote working. I can do office hubs. So if I know this is where most of my employees are, this is where they live, I can actually go and do an office there so that people don't need to do long commute and you're actually near to your houses. You can do time flexibility. So instead of, you know what, because look, the essential thing is deliver the output.
Precisely.
It's not about the number of hours you put in, but about the output that you bring out. So
Precisely.
as long as you do your job, I can allow you to do so many things. They said, do you want to start your work at night? As long as, especially for people that also interfaces with outsiders, the core hours are actually covered. You can adjust your starting and closing hours so that everybody is not on the road at the same time and stuff like that. So there are many ways that we can work around this phenomenon.
Thank you so much, Gbemiga. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much. Remote first mindset and remote first response. Excellent. Thank you. So I'll come to you, Tolu. Still teasing out the key findings from the research. Respondents said that what helped them work productively from home were personal factors and organizational factors. If you remember the personal factors that Professor Vaje mentioned, she talked about time management, self-managed mastery, determination, and so on. But then the research sample comprised 85% of managers. Do you think that we would find this at lower levels of the organizational ladder? And you did mention that you conducted a survey. So if this also would be, the findings at the lower levels, what then would you adduce as, the reasons for the productivity that your employees were able to achieve? And what are the implications of this for employers? 1 minute, please. 1 minute. Thank you.
Thank you, Esther. So employees at the lower cadre earn less. So I suspect that your data may quantitatively look alike, but if we were to dissect it, it will be different. Employees at the lower cadre need more support for data, for connectivity, for power, for creating a home office that most of them will not have had, for developing skills to speak truth to power when they're invited into meetings at 9 p.m. So I think that's the kind of support that those guys are going to need, and also knowing that their age range is they're millennials, so they will need to be handled a little different. Now, implications for the employer. The line manager in this season needs to be trained differently on how to manage employees remotely. Gbemiga said quite a few things there. I took a few notes. Needs to be trained on how to get intimate with employees. So I find at my meetings, and I have quite a number of young people, every Friday we take a pulse of everybody. We take a pulse, we say, tell us your pulse on 1 to 10. And what we then do is, depending on the pulse you share, someone on my senior team checks in with you. So that immediately gives us access into exactly what's biting you. And for a number of ladies on my team, as an example, it's the fact that they've got work meetings and they've got online schooling. So they must know that we understand and we're not going to judge them as a result of this. So line managers need to be trained on how do you set goals? How do you break them into little chunks? How do you coach employees? How do you become broader minded? Because you're going to have different kinds of people and no size is going to fit all. So I'm going to end it there, Esther.
Fantastic, Tolu. Fantastic. Thank you so much for that. Training is important. Gbemiga, I'd like you to respond to this in 30 seconds if you can. And the question seeks to explore the external validity or the general application of the research findings. We know that the research was conducted, just for Lagos alone, but your organization has locations outside of Lagos. Do you think that your employees or people generally, working outside of Lagos, especially in small towns, will be willing to work from home in the future? What do you think? Gbemiga, you need to unmute yourself, Gbemiga.
Okay, so sorry about that.
Thank you.
We need to look at it from the fact that remote working is no more an employee perks now. So it is more about how do we get efficient and how do we build resilience in the business. So even if you're outside Lagos, things can still happen. There could be road construction, there could be elections period, there could be population census when we shut down this country for almost about 1 week. There's so many things that could happen that will give you that opportunity. It's like having both of the worlds. So you know that you can actually do physical offices, and then you know that you can also do remote working. And to think about it, there's some people that believe that, their own mental health involves leaving the house to go to another place. So as long as people have that opportunity to say, look, I have a situation, I need to do remote working because I need to concentrate, or I need to be in the office to go and do something that it works better. It's the opportunity that organization gives that matters. The remote working and the physical offices, so that even if there's no commute issue, you know that you have that flexibility.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Gbemiga. So Tolu, an interesting statistic from the research shows that 98% of respondents indicated a preference for work from home. And you did mention that your survey also threw up about 59% of people interested in working from home in the future. So the question is, so what for this future, of work? So what exactly? Do you think that work from home would be the new normal? And if that is the case from the research findings, what are the other considerations that we should be mindful of? Legal, for example, so that we do not get into, any murky waters. What advice would you give to organizations in this regard? Tolu, please go ahead. Tolu, you need to unmute your device. Yes.
I've done that now. Thank you.
Okay.
Now, do I think work from home is becoming the new normal? I actually don't. I don't think so. I think if we find the vaccine, if we are able to sort out COVID, I suspect Some employers will go right back. But what I think will happen is that work from home will become increasingly acceptable. So MDs that were closed-minded before will open up to it. But even in the total lockdown period, Esther, we had employees calling me and my team to say, please, I want to come to work. I just want to come to work. My generator has packed up. I'm tired of having to supply diesel. Connectivity is costing me. Actually, I need people around me. I need to hug somebody. I have quite a number of people.
So Tolu, if I interject, if you allow me to interject, then wouldn't that really be the, the essence of the decisions that organizations would need to take? That if indeed the reasons people seek to come back to the office, largely is because of, the work tools and, some of those other hindrances. Is there a way organizations can step in to support in this regard?
Absolutely. So I'm sure not everybody will want it. Some people will want it. That's why organizations need a policy. You can't continue operating boundaryless. You need a policy who is eligible. What jobs are eligible? There's some jobs that you cannot do from home. What is the maximum timing we're willing to deal with? What personal tools must you have that we will check or audit before you can work from home? Or what personal tools are we going to provide? Data, VPN, blah, blah, blah. So it has to be a balance of both. But I think it will change the way the world operates, but it's not going to be everybody now works from home. I don't think so.
Wow. Thank you so much for that very powerful viewpoint. Thank you. So Professor Vajay, I come to you, and this will give you an opportunity to help us, wrap things up also. We have received a lot of insights from our speakers, Tolu and Gbemiga, but then, they are representing corporate organizations with time, well-established and time-tested corporate governance structures and processes, which, if you ask me, may have contributed immensely to the agility that they have been able to, to display. But SMEs, on the other hand, due to the less developed processes that they have, and even scarce resources, may not be well positioned to adopt work from home as a work preference. What do you think SMEs can do to harness the benefits of work from home despite their constraints? And mind you, we're not really talking about work from home as, 100% intervention in the organization, but for it to be even more acceptable than it previously was. Professor Ovaje.
Thank you. I think it's about productivity. If the SMEs, I would say any company of any size, is actually looking out for productivity. They want to see improved productivity in employees. So the costs have to be weighed against the benefits. So if we look too closely at the costs, we may forget the huge benefits. For example, why would an SME want to have all their employees go through 4-6 hours of traffic every day, arrive to work exhausted, do things the same old way, no creativity at all? And then he says, I'm an SME, I can't afford to let my people work from home even some days a week. I think it may be a little short-sighted. I think it's an opportunity for every organization to say, where will I get productivity increases? So far, I think we need a first study. We need to continue learning as we go. We just started out now. I mean, we've been running this for 4 months, work from home for 4 months. So we can't say we know everything about it. We need to continue learning. But I think it's about output. It's about productivity. If I implement working from home some days a week, will I get the productivity? If I will, then I will encourage every single employer, public, private sector, to consider that, because there is a huge cost to employees, right, of that traffic. And that's why I say this study was done in Lagos. Outside Lagos, where there is no traffic, it's possible that the SME or even the large company will say, once everything comes back to normal, we all come back to the office. But in towns like Port Harcourt, like Lagos, where there's traffic, I wonder if it will make good business sense to just come back to the office.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Vajay. Really, thank you. Our panelists, you have been marvelous. Thank you. We'll go to the audience questions now. I have a number of questions. I believe that some of the questions have been touched on in the course of your responses, but I'll read one of them. It says, I have been working from home till now, and we all have issues with internet connectivity, which I believe can frustrate work from home. As much as I love it, what can you advise? I'll go to Bemiga very briefly, given your background in telecoms.
Look, you know what? I think we will get there. I mean, I've seen Lagos State government rolling out fiber cable across everywhere in Lagos. So hopefully we'll get there. I mean, look, as long as you pick a good service provider that will at least give you some reasonable internet access, well, we'll do by, but it's a matter of allowing Lagos State to roll out its fiber program, and we see an improvement in internet access. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Tolu, what advice do you have for employers who do not respect the time of their employees because they're working from home? I did say that you had mentioned that, but if you can, you know, just summarize what you said earlier on.
Thank you, Esther. I think it's important that we all realize that no matter how good an employee is, there will be diminishing returns. If someone is working 20 hours, I bet you they're not giving you their best. So the earlier you realize that, the better. And if you were to measure productivity, you will see it there. So I would say you should erect some boundaries and encourage your leaders to do the same. Let employees understand, because you're working from home, it's a little flexible. You can start most likely not at 7 a.m. or 8 a.m., but then when you do start, we need to know that you're there. Let employees also understand that they have different productivity times during the day. So it's an opportunity for people to actually learn and understand themselves better. Once we get this right, then I think productivity is going to shoot up. I have been the most productive in this season because I'm very nocturnal and I can work at night. And that's good for me. I don't have to, go to work at night. So you have to be able to understand that and encourage your employees to do the same. So to MDs, owners of businesses out there, you can even run a pilot for yourself in a month and see what happens to productivity. Yeah. Thank you, Esther.
Excellent. Thank you, Tolu. So there's, this is almost like a comment. It says, if you had excellent internet service, work tools at home, and uninterrupted power supply, will you permanently work from home beyond twice or thrice a week? I guess, this, the asker would like the panelists, to respond. Tolu, if you had all of this, would you permanently? You wouldn't. Bemiga, if you had all of this in place, would you permanently work from home?
No, I don't think so. Look, there's always an element of personal interaction that is
okay. Okay, I think that is what they would like to know. Thank you. And then there's a question around Dane's research, where it can be found. You can actually send an email to fovaje@daneinstitute.org, fovaje@daneinstitute.org for the publication. You will have it there. And there's an interesting question. It says, thank you for this session. How can organizations also support their customers and suppliers in this transition to ensure business continuity across the board? Bemiga, would you like to take a stab at that?
Well, I mean, look, it depends on what is required, because I tell you this one, when this thing started, I remember that part of our business continuity program also involves checking whether our suppliers also can work remotely. So if you know that they can work remotely, then you can also support them. In my former company, we've supported even the call center operations, so that, when the people moves out from the call center, especially during the lockdown, we support them in terms of additional money so that they can actually operate. Because the main thing is about, you don't want people, especially those people that has customer-facing activity, to actually get stressed up. When they get stressed up, what they do is to pass that frustration on to your customer. So you also need to start thinking about how your own customers and your suppliers also can operate within this period of lockdown and remote working. So you have to support, or else it will have its own effect on your business at the long run.
Exactly. Thank you. Thank you. Really thank you for, that response. I think at this point, because our time is well spent, I'd like to begin to wrap things up and wind down. So if you'd allow me to come back to you, Tolu, in 30 seconds to just leave us with your parting shots. 30 seconds, and then I'll come to you also, Gbemiga.
Thank you. So thank you for this session. It's been revealing for me. Now, one of the things that I miss about going to work is dressing up, believe it or not. So when I saw a post on LinkedIn, I thought this resonates so well. But one of the foremost phrases I've heard in this period is work from home is a scam. And I guess the reason people are saying that is because of the issues of comfort, the boundaries, and the balance. So my advice to you is this: as a 21st century professional, design for it, because it can happen again. Create a comfortable atmosphere for yourself at home. You don't have to be there 24 hours, but creating it, make sure you can do it better. As an employer, design for it, because millennials will request for it. And there's a lot of millennials in the workspace right now. Lastly, note that balance is not something you find, it's something you create. You need to create it yourself.
Wow, amazing. Thank you. Balance is not what you find, it is what you create. Thank you.
Not my quote, by the way. I took it off someone.
Oh, I love the quote. I totally love it. Gbemiga.
Okay, good. Thanks for having me on this panel. Just two main things. Again, you have to have a remote first mindset and also a remote first infrastructure so that you can have both worlds in your hands. And what it does is to provide for productivity and also resilience. And the second one is that nobody can actually quantify the psychological impact of being alone or working alone. And that is where you need leadership presence. How do you get our leaders to get to the stage of making sure that they can actually empower and ensure that trust overcomes control in the workplace? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gbemiga. Professor Vajay, any parting words?
Just to say, I think I've said it before, but I think that it's about productivity. And if organizations, CEOs, HR directors focus more on productivity, they'll be able to find the right balance. If working from home helps because it increases productivity, you want to consider introducing a policy on it that enables your staff to maybe work from home 2-3 times a week, and then in the office some days a week. But let's be sure that we can actually calculate the productivity gains, because productivity gains speak loud and clear. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Professor Vajay. So Gbemiga said, have a remote first mindset and remote first infrastructure. Professor Vajay said it is all about the productivity. And this really, brings us to the end of this panel discussion and the Q&A session. Just to summarize the key takeaways, for me, this really has been a most refreshing and enlightening session. Mr. Aigbogun said, at the top of the hour that this perhaps is, really one of the best, if not the best, sessions that we'll be having on future of work. And I do agree with him, because there's been so much learning that has been passed on in this session. Indeed, the core of the conversation has been the need for employees and companies to begin to engage with the topic of work from home. And I know that it has been elevated to both executive and boardroom discussion levels in many companies. The usual arguments against work from home, decline in productivity, they were all demystified, in this research that was conducted. In fact, in many instances, shattered. And you could also tell from the audience questions that people are interested in exploring work from home. This is the parting words. This is really the conclusion for organizations. Begin to engage with it, because it is indeed the future of work. And so I'd like to thank once again our eminent speakers, Professor Franka Ovaje, Mrs. Tolulope Agiri, and Mr. Gbemiga Owolabi, for doing such an amazing job. Thanks so much for your time and your wisdom. And to the audience, you have been extremely fabulous. Thank you for engaging with us through the questions. At this point, I'd like to hand over to our erudite publisher of Business Day, Mr. Frank Aigbogun, for the closing remarks.
Esther, thank you so very much. And let me also thank Tolu and Beniga. It is always very interesting when you listen to people who are talking about what they do. And I think that is what we have found today. Prof has gone out to the market, as it were, and conducted this survey. But the perspective that we have gotten from Tolu and Beniga, real life perspectives that helped to either validate or at least, expand and extend the findings that Prof returned with from the market. Now, there are those who were already sold on work from home even before COVID started. There are those who were not so sold on it. And even after 3-4 months of it, there are those who would still argue one way or the other about work from home. But I think one key thing for me is that it is all about productivity and about business continuity. If a business were to properly understand itself and understand its people, and then find out that work from home helps it to achieve its key objectives, which will include the bottom line as well as, the welfare of its staff, then I believe that inertia, that worry, that concern will probably begin to dissipate. And there's also the question about eligibility. In a manufacturing business, for instance, how do you work from home? How do you Beniga, you are manufacturing cement. How do you operate machines from home to make cement? How do you bag them from home? How do you transport them from home? So more questions will be asked. But yesterday I was on another call, and I found very interesting the conversation by the gentleman who works with JC Deco, a big marketing firm with the billboards, managing the billboards in Lagos. And he said that they have found out in June that Falmouth traffic is back to 98% of where it was in March. Third mainland traffic is almost where it was in March by June. Ikorodu Road traffic is 97% of where it was in June. Perhaps these figures speak to whether or not we are adopting work from home. I think at this point, let me thank Professor Vaje, who has led this, and for the wonderful work that she has done. She has clearly put this, on the table, and I can bet that there will be many business executives that will be stirred up by the findings of this survey to do things differently. Because, as has been said, who knows? After COVID, it could be another one. It could be an election. It could be a crisis somewhere. We're already talking about the closure of Third Mainland Bridge. So there will be lockdowns in different ways and of different sizes as we go in life. But finally, let me just make the point that was made. Design for work from home because workers will demand it. On this note, let me thank our audience, and let me assure you, if you were to contact a prof via a DEN Institute, that you will be able to lay your hands on more profound insights from this summit. Once again, do have a nice day. God bless you all, and bye-bye.
Thank you.
We're not living in an era of what you know, it is what can you do.
In my notes, there are like multiple pages of stuff that I need to go and check back. Things that I won't have seen online because these people are sharing experiences and it's more insightful.
Yes, it's very important.
The CEO apprentice keeps getting better. I could see a change in ideology.
Working with my present team has been amazing. We have a lot of great minds there.
The pitch for Saturday, we started our PowerPoint.
We're ready for the competition.
With more practice, we have the ability to win this apprenticeship pitch program. It's going to be really good.